The Bay Area is a place of beauty, commerce, and innovation, but it is also where a terrible crime takes place. The crime is human trafficking. There are two major forms of this crime: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. In other words, adults and children, men and women, are coerced into performing sex acts or forced to work long hours in horrible conditions for little or no pay. 80% of trafficked human beings are female, 50% are children, and contrary to popular belief, human trafficking does not just occur in other countries. It is happening right here. 72% of people trafficked in California are U.S. citizens. Law enforcement relies on average citizens to report suspicious activity. Last year, the National Human Trafficking Hotline received thousands of calls from concerned citizens who knew something was just not right. As a result, hundreds of victims were rescued. Firefighters, doctors, nurses, bus drivers, code enforcement, airport, restaurant, and motel workers. We need those of you who work with the public to know the red flags and report suspicious activity. Trafficking involves controlling a victim through force, fraud, or coercion to exploit for the purpose of forced labor or sex, or both, for debt bondage, involuntary servitude, or slavery. However, if a commercial sex act involves a minor, force, fraud, or coercion is not needed to prove trafficking.
Decir que si yo quería venirme a trabajar con ellos.
These individuals that recruited me, their business is here in the United States, but they didn't recruit workers from the United States. They went to Mexico and looked for individuals that are not familiar with the laws in the United States, are not familiar with minimum wages, etc. The arrangement or the conditions were that I would work 4 to 5 hours a day. I'd receive 5,000 pesos a month, which is the equivalent of $450, that they would provide for my food, my clothing, my basic needs. I was working 7 days a week, between 11 to 13 hours daily, all month long, basically. I lived in constant fear that my exploiters instilled in me and instilled in all of us, because they repeated time after time, you can't talk to anybody. If you talk to the police, all they're going to do is take you and deport you. So during that entire time, I mostly was in a constant state of fear, and a very severe fear that was pervasive. About 2.5 years after I arrived, a couple of my friends that are from the same village that I'm from in Mexico, they happened to have dinner at the restaurant where I was working. I was prohibited from speaking to anybody while working at the restaurant, but prior to leaving, one of my friends wrote down his phone number and gave it to me and told me that if I ever wanted to leave that situation and needed support, to reach out to him. I packed the few belongings that I had in a backpack, a pair of pants, a shirt, and I went outside and found my friend. We drove over to his house, and that entire time I was really afraid. And about that time, about a year after I got out of the situation, the FBI contacted me, and they explained to me that I was a victim in the situation and what kind of services and support are available to me. I was still fearful for some time, but with the FBI explaining to me that law enforcement can't detain me, that they can't treat me as if I did something bad unless I broke the law, I realized that I was safe. And little by little, I started feeling that could be myself, that I didn't have to be afraid anymore. And they started investigating the current conditions at the restaurants, and they then discovered that the situation was the same. So they shut down the restaurants, and the owners were incarcerated. And I want other people to know that might be in the same situation, what rights they have and how they should be treated at work.
I wanted to be a kid and I wanted to have fun.
But what came easily to others her age was closer to a dream than reality. Her reality much closer to a nightmare.
Being molested and raped by a a relative.
At 14, she decided to run away, meeting a man who took her to his San Francisco house, forcing her to pose, sometimes nude, for pages on an escort advertising website.
I was Amber, and I was, 24, 25? And not really. I was Jolie, and I was 14.
She recalls what she really suffered behind closed doors.
Slapping or just hitting me or having me hold guns that obviously had bodies on it.
Had bodies on it?
Like, basically, they killed somebody with that gun, more than one person.
Watch for people who are not in control of their own money, driver's license, passport, or ID. Look for people who have someone else speak on their behalf or have a boyfriend who seems to be making all the decisions. Listen for rehearsed answers when asked a question. These are all signs of lack of freedom. Victims of human trafficking may appear nervous, subdued, or paranoid. They may avoid eye contact, be defensive, or argumentative. They may also fear receiving help from law enforcement. Being fearful and defensive are also signs of a human trafficking victim. People who are trafficked have physical signs too. They may appear malnourished or exhausted. They may have bruises, cuts, scarring, or even tattoos showing that they belong to their so-called pimp or exploiter. While it may be difficult to identify a human trafficking victim, knowing the red flags and contacting the authorities could save a life. But it's also important to understand that coming forward to receive help is not easy for these victims.
The South Bay Coalition to End Human Trafficking includes several service providers that are available to provide support once a human trafficking survivor is identified. That support includes crisis intervention, in-person response, emergency shelter, housing assistance, peer counseling and therapy, as well as safety planning and legal representation, including support to obtain a T visa or support with employment law issues. Advocates are also available to support survivors to access state and federal social service benefits. It's important that survivors know that these benefits are available to them, and also to keep in mind that there are many barriers that survivors face that prevent them from seeking support. Barriers can include cultural or language barriers, misunderstanding of laws and the services that are available in this country, as well as lack of information. It's important that survivors know that they have not committed a crime, and if they come forward, they will be treated as survivors and provided the support, resources, and benefits that they're entitled to.
If you see anyone who you think might be a victim of human trafficking, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-3737-888 or text your message to Be Free. The hotline is open 24 hours a day. It is run by a nonprofit agency and is not a government entity, law enforcement, or immigration agency. Your call can be anonymous. They work with local service providers to connect victims with resources and monitor this crime all over the country. You can also report a tip directly to law enforcement by calling the Santa Clara County tip line at 408-918-4960 or emailing humantrafficking@sheriff.sccgov.org. Remember, if you are on the job and see something that looks suspicious, you should follow your company or agency's protocol. It takes everybody to fight human trafficking in our country. Do your part and make a difference. Know the red flags. See it? Report it.